The call came while I was folding Leo's tiny socks. A voice, metallic and cold, said they had my grandson. If I ever wanted to see him again, I had to transfer every cent from my savings, $87,000, to a numbered account in the Caymans before dawn. I didn't hesitate. I called my bank, authorized the wire, and sold my late husband's watch to cover the fees. My hands shook as I typed the routing number. The voice warned no police, or Leo would suffer. I sat by the phone, the silence in my house louder than any sound. Then, a text lit up the screen. Payment received. Stand by for instructions. But the next message wasn't about Leo. It was a photo of my daughter-in-law, Sarah, laughing in a cafe I didn't recognize, time-stamped an hour after the kidnapping. My blood ran cold. Why was she smiling? I drove to Sarah's apartment, my mind racing. Her car was gone, the mail piled up. I used the spare key she'd given me for emergencies. Inside, everything was neat. Too neat. Leo's toys were put away, but his favorite stuffed bear was missing from his bed. I found a crumpled receipt in the kitchen trash for a bus ticket to Reno, dated yesterday. The departure time was just before the kidnapping call. My heart hammered against my ribs. I called Sarah's phone. It went straight to voicemail. As I turned to leave, the landline rang. I picked it up, hearing heavy breathing. A man's voice whispered, "Stop looking, or the boy pays." Then the line went dead. I noticed Sarah's laptop was on the coffee table, screen dark. When I opened it, the browser was on a travel site, a one-way flight to Mexico booked under her name. I went to the police station, but without evidence, they said it was a family matter. The detective suggested Sarah might have taken Leo herself. I remembered her arguing with my son last month about money, about wanting a fresh start. I withdrew the last $5,000 from my emergency fund and hired a private investigator. He found security footage from a gas station near the bus depot. Sarah was there, but not alone. A man with a baseball cap held Leo's hand. Leo wasn't struggling. He was eating a candy bar. The PI said he'd dig deeper, but his retainer was steep. I pawned my wedding ring to cover it. That night, an envelope was shoved under my door. Inside was a single photo. Leo asleep in a strange room, a toy plane on the nightstand. On the back, scribbled in red ink, "He's safe. Forget him." I confronted Sarah's mother, my former friend. She swore she knew nothing, but her eyes darted away when I mentioned the man in the cap. She let slip that Sarah had been seeing someone named Mark, a mechanic from the next town over. I drove to his garage. It was closed, a "for lease" sign in the window. A neighbor said Mark left in a hurry 2 days ago, packing a U-Haul. I checked the bus station records the PI accessed. Sarah and Mark were on the same bus to Reno. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. A transfer I didn't authorize had drained my remaining $2,000. The account was linked to Sarah's email. I felt the walls closing in. Then, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a courier holding a small box. He left it on the step and drove away. I opened the box. Inside was Leo's stuffed bear, the one missing from his bed. It smelled of Sarah's perfume. A note was pinned to it. "You weren't supposed to care this much." My hands trembled as I examined the bear. A tiny recording device was sewn into its chest. I played it back. Sarah's voice, clear and cold. "The old lady paid up. We're clear?" Then Mark. "She'll figure it out." Sarah laughed. "She's just a grandma. What can she do?" The recording ended. I sat in the silence, the bear in my lap. My savings were gone, my trust shattered. But I had proof. I called the PI, my voice steady for the first time. "I need you to trace a recording." Now. As I waited, a text came from an unknown number. You shouldn't have listened. The PI's name was Frank, and his voice was grim when he called back. He'd traced the recording device to an electronics shop in Reno, paid for in cash by a man matching Mark's description. My hands were still clutching Leo's bear, the fabric now damp from my sweat. I had no money left for a flight, so I packed a bag, filled my gas tank, and started the long drive to Nevada. The desert stretched empty outside my window, the sun beating down like an accusation. Halfway there, my car began to sputter. The fuel pump was failing, a repair I couldn't afford. I pulled over at a dusty rest stop, my mind racing. A trucker offered me a ride to the next town, but I declined, too wary of strangers. As I dug through my purse for my 8-hole A card, I found a folded photo I'd forgotten. Leo and me at the park last summer, his smile wide and trusting. My phone buzzed. Frank texted an address in Reno, the shop owner's name, and a warning. They know you're coming. Just then, a black sedan pulled into the rest stop, parking too close to my car. The driver didn't get out, just stared through tinted windows. I limped my car into a repair shop in the next town, using the last of my cash for a temporary fix. The mechanic said it wouldn't hold for long. I caught a bus to Reno, arriving as night fell. The electronics shop was in a strip mall, closed with a steel grate pulled down. I waited in the shadows, watching. A light flickered inside, and a figure moved, the shop owner, locking up. I approached him as he walked to his car, my voice steady despite the fear. He glanced at the photo of Mark I showed him, then shook his head. Never seen him, he muttered, but his eyes dropped to the ground. He hurried away, leaving me alone in the parking lot. My phone died, cutting me off from Frank. I found a payphone, called his number, but it rang unanswered. As I turned, an envelope slid under the grate of the shop door. Inside was a keycard for a motel across town and a note, Room 214, come alone. The handwriting was Sarah's. I pocketed the key, my heart pounding. A police siren wailed in the distance, growing closer, and I ducked behind a dumpster, wondering if they were here for me. The motel was called the Desert Rose, a rundown place with flickering neon. Room 214 was on the second floor, the curtains drawn. I used the keycard, the door clicking open to silence. Inside, it was tidy, but the air smelled of Sarah's perfume, the same scent from the bear. On the bed lay Leo's favourite picture book, a bookmark stuck in the middle. I opened it to a page about airplanes, and a receipt fell out. For 2 tickets to Mexico City, departing tomorrow. My breath caught. This was their escape plan. I searched the room, finding nothing else. But as I lifted the mattress, a burner phone buzzed. The screen showed a text. He's not here. Stop wasting time. Attached was a blurry photo of Leo in a car seat, looking sleepy. The sender's number was blocked. I called it back, but it was disconnected. Suddenly, the room door creaked open behind me. I spun around, expecting Sarah or Mark, but it was the motel manager holding a vacuum cleaner. You need to leave, he said, his tone flat. This room's reserved for someone else. As I stepped out, I saw the black sedan from the rest stop parked across the street, engine running. I hid in a diner next to the motel, using their phone to try Frank again. This time, he answered, his voice hurried. He'd dug deeper. Sarah and Mark had a joint account, and a withdrawal was made an hour ago at a casino downtown. I walked there, my legs aching, the neon lights blinding. The casino was loud, a maze of slots and tables. I spotted Mark at a blackjack table, his back to me, chips piled high. He was using my money. I moved closer, but a security guard stepped in my path, asking if I needed help. I shook my head, retreating to the shadows. Mark finished his game, collected his winnings, and headed for the exit. I followed him to the parking garage, my pulse racing. He got into a rental car, and as he drove away, I memorized the license plate. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "You're being watched. Leave now." I glanced around. A camera above the entrance was pointed directly at me. I hurried back to the street, but a hand grabbed my arm from behind. It was Frank, his face pale. "We have to talk," he whispered. "They've been tracking you through your phone." He led me to his car, and as we drove off, I saw the black sedan following us. Frank drove us to a quiet alley, his hands tight on the wheel. He explained that Sarah and Mark had partners, a small ring that specialized in extortion, and they'd done this before. My case was just another score. He gave me a new burner phone and told me to ditch mine. I felt a surge of betrayal. How could Sarah do this to her own son? Frank dropped me at a bus station, saying he'd dig more, but needed cash up front. I had nothing left to give. I bought a ticket back to my hometown, the weight of failure heavy on my shoulders. On the bus, I opened the burner phone Frank gave me. It had one contact saved. "Help." I dialed it, and a woman's voice answered, calm and professional. She said she was with a victims advocacy group and had been tipped off about my situation. She offered resources, but warned that local authorities were compromised. As the bus rolled on, I stared out the window, the darkness swallowing the landscape. Then, the phone buzzed with a new message. "We have Leo. Meet us at the old mill outside town at midnight. Come alone, or he's gone." The sender was unknown, but the location was a place Sarah and I used to picnic years ago. I clutched the phone, my mind racing. Was this a trap or a chance? I got off the bus at the next stop and hitchhiked toward the old mill, the night air cold against my skin. A trucker dropped me a mile away, and I walked the rest, my heart pounding with every step. The mill loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eyes. I had no weapon, no plan, just the burner phone, and a desperate hope to see Leo. As I approached the entrance, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was Frank, the PI, holding a flashlight. He said he'd intercepted the message and came to help, but his eyes darted nervously. He claimed Sarah and Mark were inside with Leo, ready to deal. I followed him into the decaying building, the smell of rot and dust filling my lungs. Suddenly, Frank shoved me into a side room and locked the door. Through the crack, I heard him talking to someone. "She's here. Now pay up." A voice replied, "The money's in the car. Where's the boy?" It was Mark. I realized Frank had sold me out. I kicked the door, but it held firm. Then a small hand touched mine in the dark. Leo was in the room with me, whimpering. "Grandma?" he whispered. I held him close, but the door creaked open, and Mark stood there smiling. "Surprise," he said. "You shouldn't have come." Mark grabbed Leo and I lunged, but Frank held me back. They dragged us to a van outside, its engine running. I struggled, biting Frank's arm until he let go, and I snatched Leo, pushing him toward the woods. "Run!" I screamed. Mark chased after him, while Frank tackled me to the ground. I clawed at his face, feeling skin under my nails, and he recoiled. In the confusion, I saw Leo disappear into the trees. Frank stood up, cursing, and pulled a gun. "You ruined everything," he spat. Just then, headlights swept across us, a police car arriving, sirens off. Frank froze, then ran toward the van, speeding away. The officers helped me up, but they weren't here for me. They were responding to a noise complaint. I told them about Leo, but they said without evidence it was a custody issue. One officer gave me a ride to the station, his radio crackling with static. As we drove, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We have the boy. Come to the quarry at sunrise or he's gone for good." The sender had attached a photo of Leo, tied to a chair in a dim room. My hands shook. I had no choice but to go alone. I borrowed a car from a neighbour, an old sedan that smelled of cigarettes, and drove to the quarry as the sky lightened. The place was abandoned, machinery rusted and silent. I parked behind a pile of gravel and waited, the burner phone clutched in my hand. A figure emerged from a shack. Sarah, alone, her face pale. She walked toward me, holding up her hands. "I'm sorry, Mum," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant for this to happen." She claimed Mark forced her into it, threatening to harm Leo if she didn't cooperate. She said Leo was safe in a motel nearby, and she wanted to give him back. I didn't believe her, but I played along, asking for proof. She showed me a keycard for a room at the Sunset Inn. As I reached for it, Mark stepped out from behind a bulldozer, holding a tire iron. "Enough talking," he growled. Sarah's eyes widened in fear. She hadn't known he was here. He swung the iron at me, but I ducked, and it hit Sarah instead. She crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Mark stared at her, then at me, his expression shifting from anger to panic. He dropped the iron and ran toward a car. I checked Sarah's pulse. She was alive. Then my phone rang. It was Leo, crying. "Grandma, help me." He sobbed before the line went dead. I left Sarah there, knowing the police would find her, and drove to the Sunset Inn. The room was empty, but Leo's jacket was on the bed, along with a note. "You're too late." My vision blurred with tears. I had failed him again. I searched the room and found a receipt for a storage unit across town. I drove there, my mind racing. The unit was locked, but I picked the cheap padlock with a hairpin, a skill from my younger days. Inside, boxes were stacked high, and in the corner, Leo sat tied up, gagged but awake. I untied him, hugging him tight. He said Mark had left him here hours ago, promising to return. As we hurried out, a van pulled up. Frank was driving, with Mark in the passenger seat. They jumped out, blocking our path. "Give us the boy," Mark demanded. I pushed Leo behind me, grabbing a tire iron from the ground. Frank laughed. "You're outnumbered, Grandma." But then, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Frank's smile faded. "You called the cops," he snarled. I hadn't, but I didn't care. We ran toward the car, but Mark tackled me, and Leo screamed. The sirens stopped nearby, and footsteps approached. A voice shouted, "Freeze! Police!" But it wasn't the police. It was the advocacy group woman from the phone, holding a badge. "I'm with the FBI," she said. "We've been tracking this ring for months." Mark and Frank raised their hands, but Leo was gone. He'd slipped away in the chaos. I scanned the area, my heart sinking. Where did he go? The FBI agent, introduced as Agent Miles, cuffed Frank and Mark, explaining they were part of a larger scam targeting elderly relatives. She said Sarah was in custody, hospitalized from the quarry injury. I told her Leo was missing, and she radioed for a search team. We combed the storage facility, calling his name, but he was nowhere. The sun was high now, the heat oppressive. I noticed a trail of small footprints leading to a drainage pipe behind the units. I crawled inside, the space tight and dark, and found Leo huddled there, shaking. "I was scared," he whispered. I carried him out, holding him close. Agent Miles assured me he was safe now, and they'd recover some of my money from frozen accounts. She drove us to a safe house, where Leo fell asleep on a couch, exhausted. I sat with him, relief washing over me, but my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. We have friends." It was followed by a photo of my house. The front door kicked in. Agent Miles took the phone, her face serious. "They're threatening escalation," she said. "We need to move you both." As she made calls, I looked at Leo, his peaceful face, and knew I'd do anything to protect him. But the fear lingered. How many more were out there? The safe house felt like a cage, with its sterile walls and the constant hum of the air conditioner. Agent Miles had just stepped out to brief her team, leaving me alone with Leo, who was finally sleeping peacefully on the stiff couch. I checked the peephole again, my heart thudding against my ribs. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. Another message from the blocked number. "We see you. The boy comes with us, or the whole building burns." I showed it to Agent Miles when she returned minutes later, and her jaw tightened. She confirmed the FBI was tracking the number, but it was a burner, untraceable. I was determined to keep Leo safe until they could dismantle the rest of the ring, but it was taking a toll on me. I hadn't slept properly in days. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed. A pizza delivery I hadn't ordered. Agent Miles drew her weapon and motioned me to stay back. She opened the door cautiously, and the delivery man shoved the box at her, then lunged inside. He wasn't here for food. He grabbed for Leo, but I threw myself between them, knocking over a lamp. Agent Miles tackled him, and in the struggle, his jacket sleeve ripped, revealing a distinctive snake tattoo, the same one Frank had described in his initial report. As she cuffed him, Leo woke up crying, and through the window, I saw two dark SUVs screech to a halt outside. Men in black jumpsuits emerged, moving toward the entrance. Agent Miles radioed for backup, but the SUVs blocked the street, and the men began breaching the building's lobby. She shoved the captured delivery man into a closet and handed me a keycard. "Take Leo to the roof. There's a helicopter en route," she said, her voice calm but urgent. I grabbed Leo's hand, and we sprinted down the hall toward the stairwell, his small fingers gripping mine tightly. Escaping meant leaving behind the little security we had. The safe house was compromised, and I had no idea who to trust. As we reached the roof access door, it was locked from the outside. I used the keycard, but it didn't work. Someone had disabled it. Leo trembled beside me, and I could hear footsteps pounding up the stairs behind us. I needed to find another way out, but the roof was our only option. Then, a maintenance worker appeared from a service elevator holding a toolkit. He saw our panic and quickly picked the lock, swinging the door open. "Hurry," he urged, but as we stepped onto the roof, he pulled a knife. He was one of them. Suddenly, Agent Miles burst onto the roof behind us, firing a warning shot. The man dropped the knife and fled, but the helicopter wasn't there yet. Then, Leo pointed to a drone hovering overhead, its camera focused on us. The drone dropped a small package that landed at our feet, and it started beeping. I kicked the package away, and it skidded across the roof, beeping faster. Agent Miles shielded us, but it was a distraction. The men from the SUVs were now on the roof, surrounding us. The helicopter arrived, its rotor wash whipping my hair, and agents rappelled down, engaging the attackers. In the chaos, I dragged Leo toward the chopper, but one of the men grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. I was focused on getting Leo on board, even if it meant I might not make it myself. I bit his hand, and he recoiled, giving me a chance to shove Leo into an agent's waiting arms. Just as I turned to follow, the man tackled me to the ground, his breath hot on my neck. "You should have paid and walked away," he snarled. Then, Agent Miles shot him in the shoulder, and he collapsed. She pulled me up, and we ran for the helicopter, but as we lifted off, I looked down and saw the package had been a smoke bomb, no explosion. Through the smoke, I recognized one of the captured men. It was Sarah's brother, someone I hadn't seen in years. He glared up at me, and the helicopter banked away. Leo clutched my hand and said, "Grandma, that man visited Mom before I was taken." My blood ran cold. How deep did this go? We landed at a secure FBI facility, where Agent Miles debriefed us separately. Leo was checked by a medic, and I sat in a stark room, replaying his words. Sarah's brother, David, had always been trouble, but I never imagined he was involved. I wanted to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy, but it meant facing that my family was more corrupted than I knew. Agent Miles brought me files showing David had ties to the same extortion ring, and he'd been communicating with Mark before the kidnapping. She said they were moving us to a new location, but I insisted on seeing Sarah first. I needed answers. After some persuasion, they took me to the hospital where she was under guard. Sarah was pale, her arm in a cast, but her eyes held a flicker of remorse. She confessed David introduced her to Mark, promising a quick way to money, and she thought Leo would be safe. "I never wanted him hurt," she whispered, but then her expression shifted. "But David, he has plans for you." Just then, a nurse entered, handing Sarah a pill, but she slipped a note into my hand instead. The note read, "They're watching you through Leo's things." I crumpled it, and as I left, I noticed a surveillance camera in the hall was angled directly at me. Back at the facility, Agent Miles met me with news. Leo's stuffed bear from the storage unit had a hidden tracker, and someone had just pinged its location. I rushed to Leo's room, where he was playing with the agent, and I snatched the bear, tearing it open. Inside, beside the old recorder, was a tiny GPS device, still active. Agent Miles traced the signal to a warehouse near the airport, and she assembled a team to raid it. I was determined to end this once and for all, but it meant putting Leo in temporary foster care under FBI protection. It broke my heart to let him go, even for a short time. I insisted on joining the raid, and after much argument, Agent Miles agreed, outfitting me with a vest and an earpiece. We approached the warehouse at dusk, the air thick with tension. Inside, it was empty except for crates and a single laptop on a table. As the team swept the area, I noticed a familiar scent, Sarah's perfume. The laptop screen lit up, showing a live feed of Leo's foster home, and a voice echoed from speakers. "You should have stayed out of it, Grandma." It was David, his face appearing on the screen. Suddenly, the warehouse doors slammed shut, trapping us inside. Gas started seeping from vents, and agents scrambled for masks. David laughed, saying, "This was never about money. It was about revenge for what you did to our family." I had no idea what he meant. My earpiece crackled with Leo's voice, screaming, as the feed showed men breaking into his room. The gas burned my eyes as I ripped off a piece of my shirt to cover my mouth, stumbling toward the laptop screen where Leo's screams echoed. Agent Miles shouted orders into her radio, but the feed showed two men dragging Leo from his room, his small feet kicking. David's voice crackled from the speakers. "You took everything from me. Now I take him." I had no idea what he meant. What had I done? I had to get to Leo, but the warehouse doors were sealed and the gas made it hard to breathe. Agents broke a window, letting in fresh air, but the delay cost us precious seconds. Then, the laptop screen flickered and changed to a live map. showing a moving van heading toward the interstate. Agent Miles traced it to a rental company linked to David. We burst out of the warehouse, piling into FBI vehicles, sirens blaring. As we sped toward the highway, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Remember the fire at the old factory? You testified against me." It was signed, David. My blood ran cold. I had testified in a case years ago against a man named David for insurance fraud, but I didn't realize it was Sarah's brother. The memory flooded back. He'd lost his business and blamed me. Now, he was using my family for revenge. Just as we closed in on the van, it swerved into a tunnel, and the GPS signal vanished. Agent Miles cursed, and my heart sank. We'd lost them. We emerged from the tunnel into pouring rain, the wipers struggling to clear the windshield. Agent Miles coordinated with other units, setting up roadblocks, but the van had disappeared. I felt a crushing weight. Leo was gone again, and it was because of a past I'd buried. We drove to a command post set up near the tunnel exit, where analysts scoured traffic cameras. I provided details about David from the old case, hoping it would help, but the emotional toll was immense. I hadn't slept or eaten properly in days, and my hands shook with exhaustion. Then, a call came in from the foster home. One of the agents there had been knocked out, but he'd planted a tracker on one of the kidnappers. The signal was weak, moving erratically through rural areas. We redirected toward it, but David must have anticipated this. My phone rang, and his voice was calm. "You're chasing ghosts, Grandma. Give up, or I'll make sure Leo forgets you ever existed." He hung up, and seconds later, the tracker signal died. Agent Miles slammed her fist on the dashboard. As we pulled over to reassess, a truck driver approached, saying he'd seen a van matching the description turn off onto a dirt road miles back. We followed his directions, but when we reached the spot, the van was abandoned, engine still warm. Inside, we found Leo's shoe and a note. "Too slow. Next time I won't be so gentle." The rain eased as we searched the area, the mud making it hard to move. I picked up Leo's shoe, my fingers tracing the dirt. It was from the pair I'd bought him last month. Agent Miles found tire tracks leading toward an old farmhouse visible in the distance. We approached on foot, weapons drawn, but the house was empty, except for a single room set up with a cot and toys. It looked like they'd been here recently. On the table, a tablet was propped up, playing a recorded message from David. "You always were too clever," he said, smiling. "But this isn't about you anymore. It's about teaching you loss." The screen showed footage of Leo being fed and put to bed. But then it cut to a live feed. Leo was in a moving vehicle, looking out the window at passing signs for the Canadian border. My stomach churned. If they crossed, it would be harder to get him back. We raced back to the cars, but as we did, my phone buzzed with a location pin, sent from Leo's hidden tracker, which had reactivated. It showed him stationary at a motel just before the border. Agent Miles called it in, and we sped there. But when we arrived, the room was empty except for the tracker discarded on the floor. A motel clerk said a group left in a hurry an hour ago, heading north. As we stood there, defeated, my phone rang again. It was Sarah, crying. "Mum, David has him? He's taking him to a private airstrip. You have to stop him." Sarah's call cut out, but not before she gasped, and the line went dead. Agent Miles traced the call to a hospital payphone. Sarah had escaped custody? We drove there, finding her collapsed near the entrance, bruised and disoriented. She whispered that David had threatened her into silence and that Leo was at a small airstrip used for smuggling, about 30 miles away. I helped her into the car, my mind racing. Trusting Sarah felt risky, but I had no other leads. We headed toward the airstrip, the night dark and quiet. Agent Miles arranged for air support, but it would take time. When we arrived, the place was dimly lit, with a single plane on the runway, engines warming up. I saw David loading a suitcase into the plane, and Leo was sitting in the co-pilot's seat, looking sleepy. We moved in, but David spotted us and shoved Leo inside, closing the door. The plane began to taxi, and I ran toward it, ignoring Agent Miles's shouts, and twisted my ankle on the uneven ground, pain shooting up my leg. Then, the plane stopped abruptly, and the door opened. Leo was pushing against it, struggling to get out. David pulled him back, but Leo bit his hand, and in the confusion, Leo tumbled onto the tarmac. I scooped him up, but David leaped from the plane, holding a gun. "This ends now," he snarled. Just then, headlights flooded the area, a car speeding toward us. It was Frank, the PI, jumping out with a crowbar. "I owed you one," he yelled, swinging at David. The gun went off, and Frank fell, clutching his side. David turned back to me, but the plane's engines roared to life, and it started moving without him. He stared in disbelief. The pilot was taking off alone. Leo clung to me, sobbing, and David raised his gun again, but Agent Miles tackled him from behind. As they struggled, I noticed the plane banking sharply. It was heading back toward us, low and fast. The plane dove, its wings dipping as if aiming for the runway where we stood. Agent Miles wrestled David to the ground, cuffing him, but the plane was coming in too fast. I dragged Leo toward a hangar, my ankle screaming in pain. Frank lay bleeding on the tarmac, and I pulled him along too, his weight heavy. The plane skimmed overhead, missing us by feet, and crashed into a fuel truck near the hangar. The explosion lit up the night, heat washing over us. Leo buried his face in my chest, trembling. Paramedics and more FBI units arrived, swarming the area. Frank was loaded into an ambulance, and Agent Miles assured me David was in custody for good this time. I held Leo, feeling a fragile sense of relief, but my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He's not the only one. The network remains." It was accompanied by a photo of a group of people. Some I recognized from old family photos, including David's ex-wife. My blood ran cold. This wasn't over. Leo looked up at me, his eyes wide. "Grandma, are we safe now?" I hugged him tighter, but the doubt gnawed at me. As we were driven to a new safe house, I watched the burning wreckage fade in the distance, knowing that revenge had roots deeper than I imagined. The new safe house was a cramped apartment above a laundromat, the smell of detergent clinging to everything. Agent Miles left us with 2 guards, but I couldn't shake the image of that photo, David's ex-wife and others, their faces staring back like a warning. I had to keep Leo safe while piecing together who else was involved, but it was driving me insane. I jumped at every noise, and Leo's nightmares kept us both awake. I spent the night reviewing old documents on my phone, recalling the insurance fraud case from years ago. David had partners I'd forgotten, including a woman named Elena, his ex-wife, who vanished after the trial. Just before dawn, one of the guards knocked, handing me a sealed envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a single key and a note. "Storage locker 42B, answers await." No signature. I knew it could be a trap, but I had to know. I left Leo with the guards, promising to return quickly, and drove to the storage facility. The locker was unlocked, and inside I found boxes of financial records linking Elena to offshore accounts and recent transfers to Sarah. As I sifted through them, my phone died, cutting me off. Then, The locker door slammed shut behind me, and the lights went out. I was trapped in the dark, and from outside, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come alone." I pounded on the locker door, my fists aching, until a security guard heard me and forced it open. He said someone had reported a disturbance, but no one was there when he arrived. I grabbed the most incriminating records and rushed back to the safe house, my heart racing. Leo was safe, but Agent Miles was gone, called to an emergency at the station. I needed to get these documents to her, but the guards said they couldn't leave their post. This pursuit was taking its toll. I was isolated, with no one to trust fully. I decided to scan the records using a printer in the laundromat downstairs, but as I fed the pages, the machine jammed. A woman entered, her face hidden by a hood, and dropped a flyer on the counter. It was Elena, David's ex-wife, and she smiled coldly before slipping out. The flyer advertised a charity event that night, and on the back she'd written, "Come alone, or the boy disappears for good." I knew it was a risk, but I had to confront her. I left Leo with the guards, insisting they double-lock the door, and drove to the event venue. It was a crowded gallery, and Eleanor stood near a painting, sipping wine. She gestured for me to follow her to a private room. Inside, she revealed that Sarah had been working with her from the start, not just Mark, and that Leo was meant to be their leverage for a larger payout. Then, she pressed a button, and the room's doors locked. "You're too late," she said, pointing to a monitor showing Leo's room. The guards were unconscious, and Leo was gone. I smashed the monitor with a chair, but Elena laughed, saying Leo was already en route to a ship bound for international waters. I tackled her, and we struggled until security burst in, alerted by the noise. I showed them my FBI contact, and they held Eleanor while I called Agent Miles. She coordinated a port alert, but time was slipping away. I drove to the docks, the documents clutched in my hand, determined to stop this before Leo was lost forever. The port was chaotic, containers stacked like giants, and I searched for any sign of him. A dock worker pointed me to a freighter scheduled to depart in minutes. I ran toward it, my lungs burning, and saw Leo on the deck, held by a man I didn't recognize. I shouted his name, and he turned, his eyes wide with fear. Just as I reached the gangway, the man shoved Leo into a cabin and locked the door. I climbed aboard, but the ship's horn blared, and it began to move. Agent Miles arrived with backup, but they were too far to board. I kicked the cabin door, but it held firm. Then, the man emerged from the shadows. It was Frank, the PI, bandaged, but standing. "I told you I owed you one," he said, and he unlocked the door, freeing Leo. But as we hugged, Elena's voice came over the ship's intercom. "You think this is over? The network has eyes everywhere." The ship lurched, and we stumbled toward the edge, the water churning below. Frank helped us to a lifeboat, and we lowered it into the water as the freighter sped away. Agent Miles's team intercepted us in a Coast Guard boat, pulling us to safety. Back on shore, I learned Elena had escaped in the confusion, but the documents I'd gathered were enough to issue warrants for her and others. Leo clung to me, trembling, and I knew I had to end this for good. We were moved to a high-security cabin in the woods, away from prying eyes. I had to ensure Leo's safety until the network was dismantled, but it cost me my peace. I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. I spent days helping Agent Miles identify the remaining members from old photos, and we uncovered that Elena was the mastermind, using David's grudge to recruit others. One evening, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a locket I'd given Sarah years ago, with a note. "I'm sorry, It was the only way to protect Leo. It was Sarah's handwriting, but when I called the hospital, they said she'd been discharged days ago. That night, I woke to a noise outside and found Sarah hiding in the trees, bruised and desperate. She confessed Elena had threatened to kill Leo if she didn't cooperate, and she'd faked her injuries to escape. She begged for forgiveness. But as she spoke, a shot rang out, and she collapsed. I dragged her inside, and Agent Miles secured the perimeter. Sarah whispered, "Elena's here," before passing out. I held Leo close, and we waited in the dark, listening for footsteps. The standoff lasted until dawn, when FBI snipers located Elena in a nearby tree line and arrested her. Sarah survived the gunshot and was taken into protective custody, likely facing charges but cooperating fully. With the network's leadership captured, the immediate threat faded. Leo and I returned to my home, which had been repaired and secured by the FBI. The quiet that followed was unnerving. No more calls, no more threats. I sold what was left of my valuables to start a small college fund for Leo, and we settled into a simple routine: baking cookies, reading books, and tending the garden. Some days, I'd catch him staring into the distance, and I'd hold him until the fear passed. We never spoke of the ordeal again, but it lingered in the way he'd check the locks at night. I found solace in the mundane: the smell of fresh soil, the weight of his head on my shoulder during naps. The revenge I'd sought had cost me everything, but in the end, it wasn't about winning. It was about this: the quiet moments, the slow healing. One afternoon, as we planted flowers by the porch, Leo looked up and smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "I love you, Grandma," he said, and for the first time in months, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. The past was a shadow, but we had today, and that was enough.